Good morning and welcome to On the Record with Buddy Cianci. My guest this morning is someone who you know. And if you don't know him, you've been living under a rock. He's the Speaker of the House of the state of Rhode Island. He's in his second year as Speaker, and his 10th year as a legislator. He represents the district in Cranston, but more importantly, he is the, some say, and arguably, the most important or the most powerful person politically in the state of Rhode Island. Our guest this morning, Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello. Thanks for being here,
Mayor, thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. I hope that when this is over, it'll still be a pleasure. Okay?
Absolutely, Mayor.
Right.
Absolutely.
Tell me, 38 studios. I cannot let you. I got to start off with that. 38 studios. What a debacle for the state of Rhode Island. What a terrible thing where we're paying millions and millions of dollars out. And you were majority leader of the House when that thing came about. When did you know that this money was going to go to 38 studios? Who told you about it? And what's your answer as to you were the majority leader and this thing passed and we were obligated for $75 million and got nothing for it?
All right. There's a bunch of questions in there, but let me answer the obvious one first. I was in my 4th year as a legislator when that occurred. That was, I believe, 2010. I had just become the majority leader. It was within a month or two. Just become the majority leader. I was just getting my sea legs. I didn't really know the position, and I was the leader of people that were there much longer than me. The simple truth of the matter is that Gordon Fox never wanted me to be the majority leader. He had a very close, tight relationship with Steve Constantino, the finance chairman, and they just locked me out of meetings.
Well, how did you get to be majority leader if they were so powerful and you had a very high position? If they didn't want you, didn't get along with you, well, how did you end up majority leader?
Well, I made a lot of friends very quickly in the House. I had a lot of support on the floor. I, quite frankly, had the support of the previous Speaker, Bill Murphy, and I helped.
Gordon Fox.
He did. Yeah. As things work out, as the votes came down, I had Bill Murphy's support. I did not have Gordon Fox's support. I had the support of my friends and colleagues in the room, and I was able to become the majority leader. But after I became the leader, the coalition of Gordon Fox and Steve Constantino, quite frankly, worked against me. They shut me out of meetings, and I didn't even know it was an issue, so there was nothing to even inquire about, and I just
So $75 million, though, Mr. Speaker, is a lot of money. And you and the majority, and why did you just went along with it and just said, okay, add $75 million to this $50 million allocation for job guarantees or bond guarantees for this 38 studios. You didn't know it was 38 studios at the time, you told me. But you just went along with it without asking any questions?
Well, we did it. Quite frankly, at the time, and you have to go back to 2010, it made a lot of sense. We were in the middle of the banking crisis. Access to capital for our companies was a big concern. We were concerned about the loss of jobs, and the program seemed to make a lot of sense. And expanding it at that time with all of those factors just seemed to make a lot of sense. So we were concerned with getting access to capital for businesses and to maintain our jobs and potentially grow our jobs. So it seemed like a great program on its merits without knowing that it all went to one player.
So you didn't know, you had no knowledge that it was going to be given to one company, the $75 million. As a matter of fact, were there any safeguards that were proposed to make sure that didn't happen, that would maybe $10 million go to each company or $5 million or $1 million? No one ever asked that question, did they?
You know, the only one that was going to ask that question was Representative Larry Earhart, and I think he wanted to put in an amendment, and who knows how that would have went had he introduced it. But I believe Keith Stokes, who was the director of the executive director of the EDC at that time, I believe he talked him out of doing it because of the concern that should there have been a bigger company that needed a little more money than that baseline, that they wouldn't qualify. So he never introduced the amendment.
So you had never even heard of 38 studios prior?
Never heard of it, never knew about it, never inquired about it because there was nothing to inquire about. We didn't, most rank and file members, all, I believe, except Gordon Fox and Steve Constantino, did not know about this until we heard about it sometime thereafter. And I'm not sure, I don't recall when I heard it, but when I did hear about it afterwards, it was a complete surprise, a shock, a little frustrating, but you assume that the EDC did their proper homework and that there was some vetting process going on, which obviously there wasn't.
As a result of this, you're a very strong guy, majority leader, at least ostensibly, and you didn't know about it. What kind of safeguards do you think should be put in now to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, exactly what we just did, and the important thing about this,
What was that?
And you said it right, buddy. This was, first of all, we got rid of the program.
Yeah.
We immediately got rid of the program. And when Governor...
What program did you get rid of? What do you mean?
The Job Guarantee Program. That entire program we got rid of.
But you didn't get rid of the EDC that still has $65 million in tax credits to give out. And
they do, but because of the lessons we learned in 38 Studios, insisted on a cap. I was originally going to put a $5 million cap on, spoke to the governor. She indicated the tools were critical to our economic development, and
what's the cap on it now?
$15 million for any one project. So,
and does the legislature have anything to say about it? Once you've allocated that $65 million, it goes over to EDC for their discretion and their brain power. And the legislation's out of your hands then, isn't it?
It's out of our hands unless we see something that we're able to act upon. But, you know, quite frankly, you have to trust the agencies in government. And we wanted to give the Commerce Corporation, which is what it's now called, the tools to attract businesses. We were told that we don't have the competitive edge when it comes to attracting businesses that other states do. So they requested particular tools. We vetted them. We discussed them. They assured us they'd be in constant communication with us. And that
what kind of oversight do you have right now over them? Nothing. Just
we don't.
Just their assurances and good word.
Absolutely.
They could give it to Joe the Millionaire, right, or Joe the Bum. They could give $15 million to, and once you've said take it, it's okay. You left that discretion to them.
And, well, we have the executive branch. The governor is the chair of the board, so you trust that there's some checks and balances there. So, and we maintain that the governor, there was a question as to whether or not she would no longer be the chair and that we'd have a different chair. And I said I want the governor as the chair of the board so that we have some political supervision of the board at the Commerce
Now, there's going to be
Corporation.
some hearings, or at least that's what I hear, that there are going to be some oversight hearings that will, in fact, be able to find out what we should do in the future about this. Do you think those oversight hearings are necessary? And if they are necessary, would you give them subpoena power?
Here's why I think they're necessary. Quite frankly, I think we know what happened. And I've always said, when the documents and the depositions are released from the Superior Court, we're going to know the story.
Well, what is the story? Was there any criminal activity involved there? Your predecessor took the fifth. Mike Corso, the king of tax credits, took the fifth. People say that Gordon Fox sold a liquor license for $52,000. What would he get for a $75 million job guarantee?
Well, I'm not going to speculate,
I mean,
buddy, but I will tell you this. I will tell you that I know the state police have an ongoing investigation, and if there was any criminal activity, that is the best organization in the state to do that, to find it and to charge it.
What will your hearings be involved with?
I think my hearings are important because it's one of the biggest debacles in the states, if not.
You were against these hearings before. Remember that? You were for them, then you were against them, then now you're kind of for them. You were originally for subpoena powers, at least that's what your chairman told me, and then you kind of backed off on subpoena power. This was before, and now you're for the hearings, and you're for subpoena powers.
I was never necessarily for subpoena powers. I was always for the public being fully informed as to what happens.
Now, what about subpoena powers?
Let me just say this. I don't think a speaker should issue. I don't think a speaker has ever in the history of the state issued subpoenas. And I think that's just a romantic notion about the speaker issuing subpoenas. That's a lot to do about nothing. But because of the enormity of this situation and because of the public's demand and right to know, if there's any new information that we could get. Now, don't forget, that was when I knew that the depositions would be released and that the public would have this wealth of information.
How did you know they were going to be released?
Well, ultimately, they're public documents. Ultimately, I knew they would be released. So I wish they were released a little sooner, but ultimately, I knew they'd be released. Now that they're released, we know what people's testimony is. We have the documents. If there's any additional information that's needed, I am going to go against my general principle that a speaker should not issue subpoenas, and I will issue subpoenas.
Are you an investigative body?
We are not, and we're not equipped for it. We're not good at it. We wouldn't be good at it, and we won't be good at it.
So why are you going to have the hearings?
because it's important that it's not for an investigative purpose.
What's it for?
It's to learn what happened, outline what happened, summarize
Isn't
what
that
happened.
investigating?
To a certain extent, but when I say investigating, I'm thinking criminal investigating, forensic investigating. We're not that type of body.
Well, the Congress of the United States told Richard Nixon that. I mean, you know, Richard Nixon will tell you differently.
Well, they have different skill sets than we do and different tools. But what we're going to do is we're going to put the story together. The elements are there. We're going to put the story together. We're going to make it public. We televise our hearings. We're going to make it public.
Moral obligation
so that the public knows, and then we're going to come up with conclusions so that we don't repeat it. So my purpose is to fully inform the public and, get whatever information we have to do to accomplish
What
that.
about moral? Do you think that you may just stop the issuing of moral obligation bonds?
I don't see us stopping the issuance of them. You know, a lot of good economic development projects. Fidelity, the Fidelity complex, and I don't know how many people have been there, but it's great. It's a grand complex. There's a lot of jobs out there. It's great for the state of Rhode Island. That was built with moral obligation bonds. A lot of good projects are built with moral obligation bonds. So I don't think it's prudent to say let's just get rid of that tool, but you have to put safeguards on them. It's a complicated tool.
And that's what you're going to try to do.
That's what we're going to try to do. We're going to have recommendations.
All right.
It's complicated. I don't fully understand the mechanisms of the moral obligation bonds, when you should use them, how you should use them. I'm gonna get into the details of that, learn more about them, and put proper safeguards in place.
All right. I want to get into something. Okay, so we are going to go forward with hearings, but they're not as investigatory as people might think. It's find out what happened and also come up with some safeguards in the future so it won't happen again.
And quite frankly, buddy, we know what happened. Everybody knows what happened at this point, but we're going to put it more into an organized,
Do you think there's any
fashion.
criminal activity involved here by anybody?
I'm not going to speculate, but I will tell you, if there is, I am angry about this, I'm frustrated about this. If there's criminal activity, I hope that the colonel and the state police uncover it and charge it.
Okay. There was a guy who got hired who was a legislator for 25 years, Donald Lally. You wrote a letter of recommendation to the governor for him. You knew he just got out of the legislature and the revolving door comes in. Now, you didn't hire him, that's for sure. Was there any deal between you and the governor to hire him?
No, there's no deal with the governor. I didn't write a letter. You're incorrect about that.
I'll stand
but I
corrected
did make a recommendation. We talked about it. I said he's a great guy. He had a long career in the General Assembly. I think she needed someone in a policy position to deal with regulatory reform. It's a very complicated political nightmare. It's hard, and we haven't accomplished enough with regulatory reform. So I just thought he'd be great with his experience in the General Assembly, and that's the only one that's going to be able to do a job like that, is someone with actual experience.
But it looks,
so I suggested that he'd be. I don't think it smells bad, because you could put a person. There's the exception to the revolving door, as far as I'm concerned, is a policy type position, and the exception's there for a particular reason. You want people that know government to do those types of jobs to serve the public's best interest. So, as far as that's concerned, when you're talking about his level of skill, and I've seen him navigate some complex issues.
His business record, by the way, his business record is like this as far as voting is concerned, according to he's pro-union and all that, and very much not with the business.
He knows the political process, and he knows how to navigate complex issues. So
there's another business process, though.
As far as that's concerned, we'd have to discuss the individual piece of legislation on their merits. But as far as knowing the process and dealing with a morass of a system, I think he's someone that could help navigate it, and that's what I suggested.
Okay, we'll continue with Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello, right after we take this break for a few short announcements. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about tolling and bridges. We'll be right back. Welcome back to On the Record with Buddy Cianci. My guest this morning, Nick Mattiello, the Speaker of the House, arguably the most important political position in the state of Rhode Island. I want to talk about trucks and tolls and highways. I remember seeing you and Piva Weed and the governor and St. Dominic, the patron saint of the labor, standing up there under the 610 connector 8-9 months ago, whatever it was, 7 months ago, saying like Chamberlain, peace in our time. We've got this whole thing solved. And you didn't say you had it solved, but you said you're going to support the whatever program you could support to make it happen. The governor comes on, makes this presentation. She has, we're going to just tax 18-wheelers. You look into it, there's going to be more than 18-wheelers. Goes on and on and on, and it's a lot different from what everyone thought. The legislature, you know, kind of goes around and around. Truckers come in. You have the Senate, the last minute, Senator Ruggiero, he passes or gets passed a tolling program. You're debating a chicken coop bill over on the other side in the House. You immediately recess and maybe come back for a special session. That didn't happen. Where do we stand with the bridges now? Everybody knows they're going to be fixed. Everybody knows the roads are in terrible shape. It's an economic issue. It's a safety issue. Where do we stand with the tolls? You were the only one that stood up. In fact, Talk Radio, even some of your detractors on Talk Radio, said that you were the only adult in the room, and that if you weren't there, we'd have been obligated for $1.1 billion for $500 million of roads, which was insane. So tell me what's the latest on the tolls, and what can we expect?
All right. Let me just say, early on I was briefed. My impression when I was briefed was that we were going to toll trucks going through the state of Rhode Island predominantly, and that would be the method of raising tolls, raising revenues for bridges and infrastructure, and every other state did it. So that makes a lot of sense. I stood out there. But if you recall, buddy, when I stood out there, I said our Finance Committee will hold hearings, and we will make sure it doesn't have a negative impact on our economy or our citizens. After that, I had a slew of people coming into my office and indicating concerns. It's a big proposal, and getting back to 38 Studios, one of the things I've learned, particularly on big proposals, you have to vet them. So I slowed the process down. I wasn't going to pass a proposal that big until I was comfortable with it. I had a discussion with the governor. I indicated that I wanted to assess the impact on the economy. We had an economic impact study done, and the results came back very well. Remy, a good outfit. They came back. It's going to show growth. The beautiful thing about the plan is a lot of the money.
That's the regional economic module or model. Yeah, but I looked at that study. It said it's going to create 6,500 jobs. It's going to create $521 million of income to the state of Rhode Island. It increases the gross domestic product and all that, but it's still paying $1 billion. We're obligated for $1.1 billion, only getting $500 million worth of roads, and your counterpart, Patricia Morgan in the Republican conference, came up with a program that said, look, can't we pay as we go, or can't there be a medium or some sort of in the middle ground where we borrow some and also take it out of existing budget items right now, because you've got a big budget, and maybe you could pay some of it that way. Are you sold on now the governor's program to go to bond for $1.1 billion?
No, I'm not sold on it yet, but every time we look at it skeptically, it looks good. Mm-hmm. The good thing about the governor's proposal is more than half the revenue comes from out-of-state truckers. Mm-hmm. If we rely just on budgetary items, that's 100% in-state funded and has more direct negative impact on your economy. The more money you can bring in from out-of-state, the better off you are. We are already doing Representative Patricia Morgan's plan. That's what we do today. We pay as we go. And I've actually, in my tenure as Speaker, created an infrastructure fund. It's going to take time to grow and build up. But we have problems with our infrastructure today because we do pay as you go, and it's just never going to work. So we've already tried that plan. We've done it for 50 years plus. It's ineffective. It leaves your bridges decrepit, your infrastructure decrepit, and it leaves your citizenry frustrated.
Do you think that
I have to say this, buddy.
Yeah.
The plan took into account just $60 million. I have a $150 million budget deficit to start off with before we go there. I know I'm going to have unachieved savings in the Medicaid reinvention program. So I'm going to have close to $200 million of a deficit to get to before you even start putting money aside for that. So realistically, it's unrealistic, and in these economic times, it's not going to work. If you want to address bridges and infrastructure, you have to do so with a realistic plan that's sustainable. Otherwise, you're doing what we do today, and we know what the results are today.
Okay. Now, I thought when that study was ordered, because you had recessed your House and didn't take up the Ruggiero bill, which would have obviously put us out to bond and put us indebted to $1 billion. But I thought you wanted a study, and you did. The governor put it out and paid $50,000 for a study, which is a good company. But I thought you wanted to know what the effect on consumers was going to be. And I don't see that in the report. If you want to buy a piece of furniture, or you want to buy a TV, or you want to buy, it's probably brought in by truck. And if you increase the tolling on trucks, then isn't it going to affect the price that consumers pay?
I would imagine at some point...
Wouldn't you want to know what that is?
I would imagine at some point that it probably would, to be quite frank about it, but I don't know.
That's kind of a hidden tax for people in the state of Rhode Island, isn't it? If they're going to pay $1,000 for a TV, or $800 or $500, and you have to add another 5 or 10%. Because of the cost of transportation over the years, that's going to be a hidden tax for the consumer.
Well, you're assuming 5 or 10%. That would be
I'm not Remy,
increase.
But you know, all I know is that if it costs more to deliver goods, the consumer's going to pay for it, not the trucking company.
Look, the reality is our bridges are the worst in the country.
No question about it.
Our roadway and our infrastructure needs a lot of attention. Yes, everyone's going to pay. Putting the toll on trucks is a nice way to do it because you bring in out-of-state money. But the reality of the situation is...
There are a lot of companies in Rhode Island who have trucks. I had one call my talk show. He's got 55 trucks. He's going to go against it. And he says the truckers will just divert. They won't come through Rhode Island, especially if you do it just on a few of the highways. I understand there's a proposal that people have approached you from the trucking industry and said, look, don't toll anybody. We're willing to pay an increase in our registration, and we're also willing to pay an increased surcharge on diesel fuel. Have you heard about that?
They've come into my office several times. We've had productive meetings. They've proposed that. When you look at the money it generates, it's insignificant compared to the problems we have. So they've even acknowledged it, and nobody's in favor of broad-based tax increases on gas or diesel fuel. But
so what can we look forward to? What can we look forward to in this legislature, this coming January? Because there's going to be no session, right? No special session.
Not at this point. By the time the study was done, 10 weeks we're in session. It doesn't make sense to go back.
So what can we look for as far as tolling is concerned?
You could plan on...
You're favoring the governor's program now, basically?
Well, a version of it. I'm still studying it. I've got my fiscal staff working on it. We're going to talk with the governor, with the Senate president, and we're going to look at the plan, make it as good as we can, see if there's room for improvement in it, and go forward with something early. I'm planning on addressing it early.
Okay, yeah, because it's going to take a year to get all the stuff done anyway. You do studies and planning and going out to bond.
And what they say is the longer you wait, the more damage there is, the more corrosion there is on our bridges, the more it's going to cost.
I'm going to talk about two, if I can squeeze these, I'm going to talk about two more things. Our baseball stadium.
Yes.
Is that off the charts now?
There's no more discussion about it. When that deal became unattainable because of the ownership of the land, there was no further discussion.
There's no more further discussion.
No further discussions.
You've had no more, and now they're talking to Springfield. Any possibility of going back to them and say, look, you'd be willing to help out and even put some money on the table to repair McCoy Stadium and keep the team in Pawtucket? Is that a possibility?
That's a discussion that everyone's going to have, but we didn't want to put taxpayer money into a ballpark that would have been grossly successful in Providence and would have netted us positive money. We had totally renegotiated terms over period of 30 years. The state would have made $20 million off that ballpark, not including any of the other activity generated for the city of Providence.
So you were in favor of using that land and
with the right deal, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think it saves. Now you have to spend $10 million to build a park. It'll cost you $500,000 a year to maintain a park, and so if you really look at it. No, in Providence. You've got to build a park there.
Yeah, you got to.
If you looked at it comprehensively, if you could get the right deal, and we weren't there yet, but we were really moving in the right direction, I thought it would have been great.
And Brown University kind of knocked you out of the box with $15 million for the land, and then the sewer thing, and then.
Now, if you look at McCoy is not for free, and that's the assumption people have is just leave it there. They're already there. I think McCoy needs in the area of $60 million in renovation. So. My question is, they're in a location that's losing.
Questionable.
It's a secondary.
It's been
type
successful
location.
there, but it needs $60 million. Have you seen the study that says it costs $60 million?
I heard
because the mayor has it.
I heard the number. It needs $60 million. So the question becomes, are the taxpayers willing to put money into a location that is a model that no longer
I don't think
works?
anybody's willing to put in, but if they had to put it anyway, they'd probably want to put it in Pawtucket. Maybe not that much money.
I think it costs you more to invest in Pawtucket than it would have cost you to invest in a brand new stadium that'd be successful in Providence.
I've got one more question for you because we only got a minute to go here, a minute and a half. The pension system in the state of Rhode Island. You backed the pension reforms, which were very important, I guess, to keep the pension system strong, or if not strong, but at least survivable. and went to court in the House, but you had to prove it. The House had to approve it. It was approved, and the workers took away about $70 million, and the pension system only returned 2.2% this year, and we're heavily invested in hedge funds, which are not paying off. We pay over $70–80 million in fees. When Caprio was there, we were paying $13 million in fees and had a much better return. We're getting a 2.2% return on $8 billion. The median return around the country is like 3.2, something like that. So when you say it's only 1%, it's a 30% of lower than what the median of pension systems are returning around the country. If you're going to do oversight, why wouldn't you do oversight on the pension system? Because eventually we're going to have to come up with the money to make that place whole again, because we're paying high fees and only getting 2.2% return on it. What do you got to say about that? And I know it's not your bailiwick, but it's not yours at all. But you're the people's, people's house. It's money for us. So I mean,
yeah. We have an obligation in all areas of government.
Any plans to look into that?
Based on how you phrased the question,
yeah.
I think we're going to have to take a look at it and that'll be something for the fiscal staff to probably look at. That's a very technical area. It's a financial area. So I'd probably have our fiscal staff take a look at it. And if we need to, I always go to experts and we'll take a look.
2.2% and $70–80 million in fees is not very nice, and a lot of conflicts there too.
It's complex, though. I'm not going to draw any conclusions. Right. It's certainly an investment. It's an area that's complex and beyond my expertise.
In 10 seconds, you're going to come back in January. What are your goals? But really quick.
Jobs in the economy, Mayor. Always jobs in the economy. We have to move our state forward. We have to improve our quality of life, and we have to get foreign money investing in Rhode Island. Okay. You've heard it from the Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello. Thanks for being here. Appreciate the time you took. And stay tuned for more great programming on Channel 6, your Southeastern New England affiliate for ABC. Have a great afternoon.